about now that 2015 has been the 25th year anniversary for Relapse, a huge milestone, and each podcast has had a little dedication leading up to this moment, which this one I'm at here is a special 25-year edition, a little preview of 2016 in the beginning. I'll get to that in just a moment. But in today's interview, I'm joined by Relapse Records president, founder, owner, Matt Jacobson. It was a pleasure having him on. This was his first podcast appearance. He's going to give you some insight into the past 25 years of the band, the days before it even started, the thoughts leading up to it, and how these past 25 years have really shaped into the independent label of Relapse Records and where we are today. The man is a business genius, and he can now bring this to the Obscura podcast today from not only the musical business standpoint, but just retiring later in life. And I think one of the ways of this spread, you definitely want to check it out if you're new to the podcast. Like I said before we jump into this whole celebration, it's cool to have a new year for me, but Relapse Records has already announced a few albums since the drop in the beginning of the year, and have a couple tracks to play for you already. Coming up next, we have Tusk's new track, Man's on Vacation, off the new album Cruising House, set to release on January 29th. Bloodiest self-titled new genre pulping album is coming out January 15th. I'll be talking Mesmerize for you and Lycus. There are 3
This is Steve here on the Relapse podcast. I'm joined today by a very, very special guest. I'm joined by Relapse President Matt Jacobson. Thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast with me.
Absolutely.
Is this the first time you've actually been on the podcast before?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Well, congratulations and welcome. And also, congratulations on the 25 years of Relapse. It's been a pretty huge year so far for that.
Yeah, it's almost surreal. 25 years, it's a long time.
To start off, we're going to take you back a little bit into history. So take us back to 1990 right now. Take us back to that first day you really wanted to start Relapse. What were some of the things that were really going through your head and how you wanted to get this going?
Sure. Well, probably predates 1990 a little bit. I was a tape trader, and I had a fanzine that I did with a friend of mine, and we really were just, music fanatics, and I couldn't really be bothered to do much besides something associated with music, and that meant I wasn't really going to a lot of my classes at the end of my high school tenure. I really just loved the buzz that I got from tape trading when I heard a band that I thought my friend whose musical taste I knew somewhat. I thought he would really like it. I would send him that demo, and when he would love it as much as I did, I really got a buzz off of it. And the idea with Relapse is really to try to do that on a larger level, take music that I really loved and was passionate about and share it with people. And kind of all along, our mission has been really just to bring this music that we love to as many people as possible.
And this first year of the label, what were some of the bands that really got the gears rolling?
Well, I think that some of the real bands, or some of the bands that really kind of gained some traction, were bands like Incantation and Deceased, and of course Suffocation and so on in the early years, or the first year or so.
And a lot of those bands are from the Philadelphia, New York area where Relapse is based out of. So in those early days, how did you really go about finding these?
We really were in touch with bands from all over the world, and it did happen that a number of these bands were kind of more East Coast based, but we were in more rural Pennsylvania, and looking at bands like Suffocation and so on. I actually had initially been in contact with those guys when I was still out in Colorado. That's where Relapse started, was in suburban Colorado, but ultimately, very quickly, we ended up moving to the East Coast.
A lot of these bands like Incantation and Suffocation have moved on from Relapse, but still very much alive today. How does it feel to really be a big part of those big legend of death metal?
Feels awesome, man. Those bands were incredible and have done so many amazing things. over the years. I think they've each produced a lot of just classic albums, and it's kind of sometimes it's kind of hard to believe that we've been a part of some of these really amazing records, and I'm really honored to have been able to work with so many amazing bands over the years.
After a few of the earlier years where it was really death metal and grindcore predominant, you started seeing a lot of bands like Neurosis, which was a big groundbreaker for the label, and then you got to a lot more of the experimental side. What really made this forward-thinking progress that Relapse has become to known as?
You know, we always liked all kinds of stuff. I think that as music fans ourselves, we didn't have too many boundaries, and we were really into bands like Coil and some of the stuff that was considered at that time industrial. It's funny how definitions of words change over time. And, you know, punk and hardcore, what hardcore was way back then, and those things. And so it was really just natural. I feel like we kind of gained traction with a pretty narrow focus of music. And then in part because that scene was new. All those things were new, and it was really exciting. And then as time went on, we just continued to do more stuff we loved, which took us in a lot of different directions.
For a lot more of the experimental music, you decided to spurn a side label from Relapse. For people not too familiar, can you give a little bit of history behind this?
Yeah, we created an imprint called Release Entertainment, and the idea was that we would put out some of the more adventurous stuff, some of the things that were further away from the kind of rock format bands. So, you know, things that weren't more straight metal or whatnot. And so that included everything from sound collage and harsh noise and, electronica, some really beautiful things like Amber Asylum. And we were really excited about that and really, to this day, proud about all of that stuff that we put out. But it was really difficult, frankly, to gain traction with things that were often looked at as very difficult and left to center. We put out some amazing albums on that imprint.
Was there a big underground following for a lot of these release bands?
You know, that's all relative. So not compared to the metal side of things. You know, some of these bands sold hundreds or 1,000. I think our biggest release titles maybe were in the 5,000. There was probably a few more. There was probably a few that was a little bit more than that. But Merzbow was definitely one of our big sellers early on, and that was more like 5,000.
Yeah, Merzbow is definitely one of the bigger names people notice with these experimental bands. And just to kind of go back to the whole forward thinking, did this attribute at all to the name Relapse? Because I know there's a little bit of history with that.
So the name Relapse came about really just because I was looking for something that implied metal, but wasn't necessarily just that. You know, it wasn't Metalhead Records or whatnot. But I also liked that it was short, and I liked the alliteration with the record. So it was really as simple as that.
So how did you come up with the name Relapse?
Man, it was just really those things. You know, I sat and brainstormed a list. I'd actually had planned to start a tape label with my friend that did the fanzine with me, and we had both come up with a list of names that we liked, and I had come up with Relapse at that time, but he didn't like that, and we ultimately ended up settling on Lethal Records for that because that's the one we both agreed on. That never came to fruition, and so then when it came around for me to time that I was starting a label, I was like, went back to that name Relapse that I had brainstormed before.
We have a huge independent scene of record labels in the metal scene. How do you think that compared to back when Relapse started to now, the independent record label has really changed and developed?
You mean labels in general?
Yeah, I would say going about like
the
day-to-day workflow of running an independent label then and now.
Well, everything has completely changed. I mean, there was no commonly accessible internet back in those early days, and frankly, you couldn't put a blank CD in your computer and burn one back then. So everything has changed, and then there's a million more labels today. But that's just a continuation of the way the world has evolved. You look at one point we had 3 television networks, and eventually there was some more, and then there was cable, and then now there's all these streaming services and so on. And so the number of options and the number of people doing any given thing is just exponentially greater. So it makes sense that there's a whole lot more labels today, but definitely how one would approach it would be so different today than when we started.
Focusing back a little bit on yourself here, how would you say that your day-by-day workflow has really changed since you were trying to build the label up back in the 90s to now how you operate in 2015?
Well, geez, in the early days, I was answering the phone, taking mail orders. I was packing wholesale orders. I was
doing everything.
Literally everything. I mean, now that the company's been around so long, there's a couple positions that I haven't done because they're just new positions that, technology or the changing world has necessitated. But there was a time where I had literally done everything in the company, and I was really proud, actually, to say that I did everything long enough to build up to the point where I could afford to hire someone that could do it better than me.
That's a good way to put it. I was just about to ask, how do you really go about having that one-man foundation to being able to get more people on board besides just the monetary value behind it? Like, how do you get people to really get behind what you're doing?
I think it's just pure enthusiasm. I mean, it's my enthusiasm, which I've been told is infectious, and it's finding like-minded people that share the passion for the music and the same values. And, our first number of employees, I look back in retrospect, and it's almost surreal or crazy that they were working for us. So we had a couple guys who were some of my good friends from high school who moved to Pennsylvania, and we provided their housing, we provided lunch and toilet paper, and they got $50 a week in the very early days. And they certainly weren't doing that because of the money. They were doing it because they really loved it.
In 2015, you still see a handful of the one-man projects really going on. You have like Profound Lore, for example, and a few other more notable independent labels. How do you think it really is challenging if you could picture yourself still being a one-man job in this year?
Wow. I don't know if that would be feasible. I mean, certainly not on the scale that Relapse functions. But that said, I think that a one-man operation has its advantages and its disadvantages. The advantages is there's no one to disagree with or to, have personality conflicts with. But, the flip side of that is there's also no one to help keep you motivated and positive when you have challenging, difficult times. And I think that applies to any business, not just the music world. It's like, I guess there's that old expression, it's lonely at the top. I mean, if you're at the top, bottom, and middle, because you're the only one, there could be some really dark days if you have some struggles. So I think that it's harder to keep positive in those instances, and therefore I think it's more likely that you could give up in those really tough times.
Yeah, you got to really dig deep into those situations. What is some advice that you would give to people in 2015 that want to start their own independent record label?
I think the same thing applies just broadly to business as well, which I am a big believer in doing what you love. Be passionate about it, and that is the most important thing. I think that, someone like myself, I didn't know how to do anything. I had no school except, barely high school. I had no training. There was no classes on how to start or run an independent record label, but I was very, very passionate about it and very motivated and very enthusiastic. And, you just learn as you go and learn from your mistakes and those things. So I think it's really as simple as, follow your passion.
You touched on a good point there with learning from your mistakes. It seems like with a lot of the technology we have, there are a lot of ways to kind of educate yourself on starting your own business. In that scenario, do you think there's gone a little bit of a shift from a really trial and error basis to you kind of have to get it down the first time?
Well, I definitely think there's a lot more resources available today. The internet has changed everything. So no matter what you want to do, you're a lot more likely to be able to find information and read about it, or find a how-to video on YouTube or whatever it might be. I recently met a woman who was unemployed and figured out how to and completely remodeled her house, every aspect of it, from YouTube videos.
Damn, that's impressive.
It is. It blew me away. And, so that information is out there. And, does it mean there's more pressure on doing it right the first time? I don't think necessarily that's the case at all. But, with anything you do, there's a certain threshold for success and failure. And if you fail time and time again, I mean, a lot of people in Silicon Valley these days are proud of their past failures, and I can see why. I mean, I learned so much from every time we faced near bankruptcy or just whatever huge challenges as the music industry shifted or so on. You know, I really think it you learn from it and you come out on the other end better for it. But yeah, I don't know if it necessarily means there's more pressure today just because of the access to information. You know, it really depends on what you're doing, I guess.
Going off of that big shift that's going on in the music industry, and this is on so many levels, as you know, as someone that's at the forefront of it, there's so many things going on from major labeling to just the distribution of music. And one of the things that with Relapse, there's been a few artists of yours like Neurosis, for example, Baroness now, who are really going for that DIY aspect of things. And you notice it even outside of metal. A lot of bands are really trying to do everything themselves, having their own labels, trying to really start it. What is the support, I guess you could say, that Relapse has been giving to them, whether it's just motivation-wise or if there is a little bit of a crutch support?
I see. I don't know if there's anything that's really formal in the way of that crutch support. I mean, I'm always willing to help people with advice or perspective or, you know, introductions or anything that I could in that regard. But, and, you know, things like if you look at Neurosis and New Rot, while they do have their own label, we are still involved with the band. We're still reissuing their catalog, and not just the records that we put out initially. You know, we're putting out all of their stuff. And you know that becomes a great partnership because you know, reissuing super deluxe records on heavyweight vinyl and fancy jackets and manufacturing a lot of them and shipping them all over the world is such a substantial capital investment that it's not the kind of thing that every band or small label can do or to do comfortably or to do in a certain time frame. And so that's why we still have a great business relationship as well as, you know, friendship and I think wonderful mutual respect and so on. I'm honored to continue to work with Neurosis because they're one of my favorite bands of all time, and I am incredibly proud that we've been able to do so much with them over the years.
One of the things that Relapse really prides itself on is your wide diversity of, as you were saying, distribution. Because you look at your online web store, there's a plethora of bands that are not associated with the label, but you still take the time to want to distribute their merch, their music. What was really the process behind having such a big and innovative online store?
Well, that's there's a lot of elements to that. You know, if you go back in time and you look what the initial motivations were, it predates, you know, everyone having the internet. And so it was actually mail order flyers and catalogs, direct mail that aspect of our business was started with. And it really blows my mind, but I actually specifically remember the conversation internally when I was telling my staff, like, I don't know if anyone is going to order on the internet, but I really think that we should try.
I think that was a good idea. I think in hindsight,
so
yeah.
To think about it now, it's so ubiquitous, you know. But back to the core question, the real motivation was that as someone so passionate about the music we were putting out, I was so frustrated because I knew that if more people could have access to the music that we were releasing, that it would be more popular, it would sell more. And it wasn't about the money. It was more just about being able to reach people that would love it. And I realized that there was all of these things standing in our way. There were these gatekeepers back then, prior to the internet. There was magazine editors and retail record store chain buyers and distribution A&R people and all of these decision makers that were standing between us and the music fan. And so we decided that we were going to start this, you know, direct mail catalog and this direct to consumer thing because we wanted to reach the fans directly. And we didn't want to have to rely on all those gatekeepers who didn't understand, you know, especially this kind of new wave of extreme music that was just bubbling up. And we also wanted to get our music in other places. So a big part of the early days of our mail order selection was we would trade our records with people all over the world, and we would get their records, which was such a win-win because it allowed us to offer our customers here records that they couldn't get in a record store, and it allowed our bands to, reach into other areas, often even places that it would be too expensive for them to buy the cassettes or the vinyl or later the CDs. I not long ago met someone from Ecuador who totally freaked out because he said, back in the day, the Relapse CDs were some of the only official CDs that were available in Ecuador because we traded with labels down there, and then we distributed those labels' music up here. And it was really kind of cool to hear that we had a real impact. We'd really touched some people, and we had been able to get our bands out to a broader audience with all of that, and it was pretty cool.
It sounds like your history and foundation with the tape trading you were talking about before the label really, really impacted this decision. It really gave you the knowledge you needed for that, because trading is hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a foundation in a lot of ways. I ended up having some pen pals and tape traders, in various spots around the world, and that also allowed me to learn about all kinds of new bands and other zines where I would then, read about other things, and it was this really amazing global network of underground music fans that had the ability to interact prior to the internet. And it's just so weird how to keep saying prior to the internet, but the internet really has been such a big game changer.
One of the biggest aspects of your 25th year celebration has been, as you were mentioning before, the reissuing and reprinting of classic Relapse vinyls. Now, just in the past few years alone, there's been a huge influx in popularity again for vinyls. What was the decision to really kind of go at this full force, and why do you think vinyl has really made an impact again?
I might need you to repeat a portion of that question. I can tell you why I think that vinyl has made an impact again. I mean, I'm really proud that we never stopped making vinyl. There's a lot of labels that did, and it was difficult to continue to do it, and we weren't able to do it for all of our titles during the years that vinyl was no longer appreciated by the masses. But I think that part of the reason that vinyl is more popular than it has been in a really, really long time is this simple. It's that tactile, connection and being able to look at the cover and hold it in your hand. I mean, it's like, at this point, when you hear something on Spotify, it's like, okay, cool, you heard something on Spotify, but you can't connect with it in the same way when you can read the liner notes and see what the band members look like and what band T-shirts they're wearing. And I mean, I guess you can do that all with the internet if you want to dive deep enough, but I think that there's a lot of music listeners that in today's more streaming world, they're much more casual about it. I think the vinyl it's just tangible, and I'm super excited that people are collecting and listening to vinyl again to the degree they are, because it's definitely been growing a lot.
I'll reword my question as well, but I'm pretty sure that you answered it as well. But it was to be what was really the decision behind all these beautiful classic vinyl reprints?
Reissues. Sure. Yeah, it was in part to really celebrate our anniversary and to draw attention to some records that maybe didn't have as much recognition at the time when they were released, because we were a smaller company or we didn't have as good of distribution back then, or it's interesting how time changes things. Disembowelment and Bongzilla now have a much bigger following than they did when we first released the records, and some of that is just time. It's like it's allowed more people to organically discover these bands, and some of the things that we've reissued have just been out of print since they were originally released, and sold out, or just haven't been available for some time, or some of them are just now special editions with enhanced packaging and so on. We just thought it was one of the best ways we could celebrate our birthday and our anniversary is just by putting out some more awesome records and reissuing some of these really celebrated titles from our catalog.
One of the reissues you had really resonated highly with me. As someone that's a little bit younger, there's a lot more of the underground and smaller bands when your label first started that I wasn't as familiar with. And one of them, which I found out to be right in my own backyard, Human Remains. I'm from Matawan, they're from Hazlitt. And I had no idea that it was David Whitty. I had no idea the whole history. And that I had no idea there was a grindcore band that came out in early 90s right in my own backyard. So there's so many of these reissues just from myself alone, not being really around in that time to understand these bands. It's really been giving a good insight into what was going on in history.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and that's definitely part of what I was getting at when I was talking about these bands, because of either our distribution or because the fans that might be exposed to them today were toddlers or weren't born when they were released, and it is pretty awesome to be able to reach in a way, I guess, a new generation of people with some of these things.
Yeah, it definitely helps make more knowledge for
sure.
Younger people my age.
Man, and Human Remains, they were doing such a special thing back then, and I think they unfortunately weren't as celebrated as they should have been at the time when that stuff was released, but they were really blazing new ground, and I'm really proud of some of that kind of stuff. I think if you look back through our whole catalog's history, I think we have a pretty incredible track record of discovering and releasing some pretty amazing bands that were doing some very fresh things that often other people looked up to or in some instances emulated later.
Going off of the flip side of that, are there any albums throughout these 25 years that you had really wished that you wanted to get a hands on for Relapse and just weren't able to, and you missed out on?
Oh my God, the list is long.
I can imagine.
Well, and also, there's a pretty good list of missed opportunities, things that, bands that we had an opportunity to sign, and we didn't for one reason or the other. And I'd like to, I'll share a couple of them with you. Before At the Gates signed to Eric, they contacted Relapse and asked if we wanted to put out their new album. And, I liked their previous records, but they didn't blow me away.
At which point in their career was this?
This was just prior to Slaughter of the Soul. So if we would have signed them, Slaughter of the Soul would have been their first Relapse record.
Okay.
And so, we passed on it, and then they signed Eric and put out one of the best albums of that decade. And ouch,
Yeah.
But based on what they did in the past, it was good. It was always solid, but it just wasn't unbelievably amazing. But then they went on to do something unbelievably amazing. And we also had an opportunity to work with Mike Patton. They contacted us. His manager contacted us when he formed Phantomos, and they wanted to put it on Relapse. I actually was really honored at the time because the quote was, "Well, this new project that he's doing is so weird. We couldn't think of any other label besides Relapse." And I love that they thought of us when they thought about this thing being really weird and maybe left of center. And but when it got into talking about business terms, the amount of money they asked for at that time for how small of a label we were was super intimidating, and we just couldn't even fathom it. And I also honestly did not realize how popular his he was and his following is, how big his following is at that time. And so we ultimately passed on it, and that's the whole reason he started Ipecac was to, one of the reasons was to put out that, and then all these other things followed. I wish that we would have not been intimidated by that scale of investment at that point in time, and would have figured out a way to do it because that's, I think, pretty innovative stuff. Well, one other thing I'll add on that topic is that I once had a friend that was from the music industry that was doing a lot of metal back in the day, but was a little bit more on the mainstream or accessible side of things, not the kind of underground approach. And at one point I was lamenting to him about how we had missed the opportunity to sign this band or that band, like they had approached us and we couldn't do it, or we said no, or whatever. And I was really bummed out about a few bands in particular. And he's like, you know what, man, you actually want those stories, and you want to look back and see that because it at least means that you were there, you were relevant, you were in the mix, and even if you didn't get to do every one, because you can't do them all, right? But he also passed on signing Guns N' Roses. So.
Oh, that's a pretty big name out there. Going off of the signings of bands, do you ever notice yourself in contact with other labels and trying to really jockey over it? Or is it always just a connection between you and the band, and then the band has...
When you say jockey over, you mean competition between the labels?
Yeah, competition in the sense of you'll notice that there's another label or two that are trying to go after that same band. So do you ever find yourself in contact with those labels, or do you just leave it for the band to make their decision?
Yeah, typically, I mean, first off, we kind of have an unofficial policy that we don't get into bidding wars because it just often can be dangerous. You know, this business is a really difficult business anyway. You know, it's the music business. You're dealing with art and variables of variables of variables, and it is really difficult to make the numbers always work. And so I think a lot of times people get that kind of fever and maybe emotional attachment or emotional kind of excitement about like winning. And I think the same thing kind of happened, especially when eBay was new. People would just like get caught up trying to outbid someone else, and I think that can be dangerous. But you know, generally we approach bands, and if they are talking to 16 other labels, and there's other labels that you know they either connect with or think is a better fit, or will pay them 20 times as much. You know, generally it's so be it. It can sometimes be a bummer, but we also have, you know, generally really good relationships with other labels. I've definitely gotten calls from owners of other companies saying like, "Hey, band X has approached us about doing a record, and you know, I know you guys put out the last 3 records, and you know, they say they're free from the agreement, but I just wanted to check with you, like, are you cool with us doing that?" You know, which is super nice. Not necessary, but super nice, and so that kind of thing is always appreciated. So I think there's in this space, there's a lot of labels that have a lot of respect for each other, and while we are competition to a degree, I think it's more like we're in it together versus we're trying to battle it out against each other.
You just mentioned it, but I was about to ask, do you notice, especially in metal, that huge level of respect across the board?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's there's always there's always people that fall into that, and then people that don't, and I think there's always going to be haters, and there's always going to be people that are negative or catty or whatever. But generally speaking, from my limited exposure to other genres in the music industry, the metal scene has way more camaraderie and I'd say healthy competition versus, you know, like backbiting and people that are just harsh and mean. But you know, there's always some people that approach things differently. But I think that metal is a really solid community.
Going back again through these 25 years, we talked a little bit about bands that you missed out on. Just in general, what are some life lessons you've learned by working these 25 years that you want to give out to people?
That is a very broad question. Life lessons I've learned. You know, okay, there's a couple things. And one is my personal attitude or philosophy is that anytime I can, I will generally help someone. You know, I have, in addition to Relapse, more recently, I've started a pizza business out here on the West Coast, and I've had other people that are trying to start pizza businesses approach me for advice. And I know some people that would look at that as competition and not want to help with those things. But my attitude is, you know, I've been lucky enough to have people help me in the early days with that business and with Relapse. I have several people that were kind of mentors to me over the years that I just appreciate so much that I'm willing to help people anytime I can with information or advice or insight. And I think that that's a pretty broad life lesson. You know, to a degree, I think that it's treat people how you want to be treated and give back and pay it forward, and all those things are related. And I really think there's something to that. I also think that one of the biggest lessons that I learned is I used to often beat myself up for things that I didn't do well and that I thought I should do well. And it also meant that I was behind on things, and especially as the business grew, there was more to do. And eventually I learned that I shouldn't try to do everything. What I should try to do is do the things that I'm really good at, and then find and surround myself with people that are good at things that I'm not, because then we make a really good team and we can complement each other. And ultimately, a lot more gets done more efficiently, and you feel better about it. I definitely spent a lot of time in the early years beating myself up for things that I was was just not good at, and trying to force myself to be better at it. And things were so much better when I realized I should just take a different approach.
That's an amazing piece of advice. Definitely, for me alone, that's something that I notice happening a lot with myself. A lot of work with the radio station and just being in school and being 21 years old in 2015 in general.
Well, and I'll tell you that, especially if you're talking about starting a business, that is one of the best pieces of advice I think I could offer someone, which is, partner with or hire or collaborate with, somehow, find those people that do things well that you don't, and maybe that don't do things well that you do, and that way you guys really can make a great team in that way.
What do you think really holds the future of Relapse and metal?
In a lot of ways with Relapse, I want to say it's more of the same, which I think on the surface sounds boring, but I'm really proud of what we've done and kind of our place in the world, so to speak. And I think that we've been really fortunate to work with so many incredible bands. And so, yeah, I mean, our goal is to keep doing what we've always done. And one other thing I should mention that I think is pretty important about our approach to things, the goal with Relapse has, like I mentioned earlier, always been to get the music out to people. And it's been motivated by the passion for the music. Like, I didn't start Relapse to start a business. I started Relapse to put out cool records. And, so often those simple principles drive some of our strategy and how things evolve. Another thing I'm really proud of is that we were the first record label to upload their content and allow their content to be on Bandcamp, for instance. Prior to that, it was mostly just independent bands that were there, and a lot of other labels didn't want to do it because their perception was that, they don't make as much money as they do through other channels, or it's giving it away, or it's devaluing it perhaps. But our attitude has always been, we just want the music to be everywhere that it can. Back when we couldn't get in magazines and we couldn't get in record stores, and we started the mail order partially for that reason. Our philosophy is just to get the music out everywhere. And so I think that that's going to continue to guide us into the future, putting our music everywhere that it can be, and continuing to work with bands that inspire us, and hopefully we'll continue to be fortunate to work with bands that are doing amazing and if we're really lucky, innovative, exciting, fresh, influential things.
You notice that just in metal in general, it seems like for a while people have been waiting for that big band to kind of emerge and make a presence in the metal scene again, kind of going back to like when the Big Four happened, and then a lot of people say Pantera was that band. Do you notice that there are certain bands going on right now that are really going to be that huge staple for the future of metal?
That is a really difficult question, because in so many ways it goes back to something I touched on a little bit earlier, which is, the Beatles were really huge in part because there were so many less bands and less labels and less television networks. So when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show or whatever, that had such an enormous audience and such an enormous reach, because those were the only things that were available. And so you had this gigantic audience. And as time has gone on, you have the long tail effect, and everything is splintered, and there will never be as big of an audience as there was back then for any given thing. And so as time goes on, I feel like, big becomes relative, and it is never going to be as big as Metallica's Black Album was, and those things. I could be mistaken, but it's going to be interesting to see. So I think there's always going to be bands that are really important, and always going to be bands that have a new band comes out that has a super high profile and perhaps act as a gateway drug, so to speak, a bridge. When I first got into heavy music, I listened to the radio as a kid, and I discovered that I really liked ZZ Top, and that led me to Ozzy and Sabbath, and that then led to Iron Maiden and Metallica. What's different today is that heavy music already exists. Whereas I mean, obviously a lot of that existed, but as you know, when I started listening to Napalm Death, well, they were freshly a new band, and it was in a new scene, in a new genre, or subgenre at least. And, you know, one thing that's kind of confusing, frankly, is I don't know where things are going to go, how many new subgenres can exist, or can they even, because I feel like now everything is just becoming kind of a lot of blurry lines, because ultimately it's drawing influences from so many different things. And while you certainly have people that are doing something very pure with regard to approach to a style of music, I think more and more we're going to have things that are harder and harder to put into a category or label, because it's a mashup in so many ways.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. You notice a lot of these bands grindcore bands are starting to have sludge elements to them. A lot of these death metal bands are having the whole atmospheric tone to them. They're just trying to combine as much as possible, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's natural, and so it's going to be real interesting to see how things continue to evolve.
For people that get a little insight into your life, besides for Relapse, what are some of the other things that you do business-wise?
Let's see. I have a pizza business based here in Portland, Oregon, called Sizzle Pie. We have 4 locations in Oregon, Portland, and Eugene, and we are currently working on one in Seattle, Washington. It's like I've taken the same approach that I did with Relapse, really, which is I only can do things I'm passionate about, and I love pizza, and I love the neighborhood that our first shop especially started in, and then we just brought in our other influences. So our jukebox is filled with metal, and a lot of our merchandise has that tone to it. And when we opened the first pizza shop, our whole idea was to kind of approach marketing it in the same way that you would a band. Yeah, it's just taking all the things that I and my business partner love and mashing them up, just like we were talking about with music. And besides that, I have some other businesses as well, almost too many to touch on, but we are working on a convenience store concept. I'm working on a brewery here in Portland, and have some other really interesting things that are percolating as well. My former accountant said that I had entrepreneur's disease. I mean, just looking at it, like, the first Suffocation EP, The Human Waste, it was the first CD we ever put out. I mean, game changer in the whole scene. What that band was doing back then was just so powerful and so new. First Amorphis Curly Isthmus record. The double bass on that record, the Sunlight Studios recording, incredible. Also, the reissue of the Repulsion Horrified album in our very early days was something I was so excited and honored for. I mean, it was such a huge influence on me and a huge influence on Napalm Death and this whole, first wave of grind and death metal. And to be able to reissue that record was just amazing. Touched on Human Remains earlier. Can't say enough good things about that band. We were sad when they split up, but I'm so proud of Dave Whitty and everything that he's gone on to do since. One of the best dudes of all time right there. Dillinger Escape Plan EP, Under the Running Board, just what that band did live and that recording especially, there was nothing like it at the time. Really was a game changer for me, and ultimately, as you may know, Dillinger went on to become one of the best-selling bands on Relapse, especially back then. Signed Neurosis, that was definitely a tectonic shift in our place, I'd say. And it was also really incredible because they really had come from a different world in a lot of ways. You know, they had come more from the alternative tentacles and kind of the more punk realm, and to be able to take them to a kind of a different and ultimately broader audience was really cool. Plus, I just still can't believe I put out that record.
Yeah.
first couple Nile albums were an interesting time in death metal. I think things had become a little bit stale for a minute before then, and I think their approach definitely was not only really aggressive and incredibly well played, but definitely had a bit of a fresh angle. Necrophagist. I also have to mention Nasum. You know, one thing that was so amazing about when we put out that Inhale Exhale record is, in a little parallel to what I think Nile did in the death metal segment, Nasum sure did for the grindcore world. You know, the impact that album had on some of the members of Napalm Death was pretty incredible to see. I think it kind of reinvigorated things.
Take the
One thing I'll just bring up that's overlooked that I really love is Burnt by the Sun, another Dave Whitty thing. So incredible, but its time kind of came and went. They only put out a few records and went away. And given how many things Dave has gone on to do, I think there's probably some people that would really be excited to discover that. Moving on from 2005, one of actually, I think, the most incredible things that we've ever put out that was so honored to do is the Pentagram First Days Here collection. I think that record is those recordings are truly timeless. And I also love how those early 70s recordings literally go back to the foundation of what became metal. And for us to be able to dig up those recordings and to kind of bring them to the world is amazing. Mastodon, maybe I should mention them.
Yeah, they've only gotten a little big.
Yeah, they've had a little bit of an impact on things. Yeah, since the first time I saw them on their first tour in the basement of a row house in the ghetto in Philadelphia. It was pretty funny. After the show, the guy that lived in the house came outside and said, hey guys, it's almost 2:00, and around these parts, that's shooting time, so I suggest that you come inside or go home. Oh, man. And to touch on the other side of things, an evolution of the release side of things, releases from bands like Zombi and Horseback, which now are just on Relapse. You know, we ultimately decided that trying to maintain that whole separate identity was difficult. And actually, a lot of times people didn't even pay attention. You know, we'd send review copies of things that weren't metal to magazines, and I guess just because it came from the same address, they just assumed they were metal, and it was annoying. It's like, didn't you listen to it? Anyway. We have Baroness, certainly important in our evolution. things like Merkur and Nothing, I really am super excited about, and especially in kind of where they fit into the spectrum that is Relapse. I love how different those things are and how they still work in the context of what we're doing. And then things like Windhand, I mean, those guys are doing, it's incredible.
Do you have any final words you'd like to give out there for people listening?
I'd like to thank everyone for their support of Relapse over the years, and for supporting our bands and also the music scene. Ultimately, none of it would be here if there weren't people like all of us that are so excited about it.